Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the A Better Chance virtual information session. My name is Anita Roberson, and I am the program manager for the Middle States region. I'm actually filling in for Sonia Simpson, who is the program manager for the Southeast region. So welcome to our webinar. We're so happy to have you here today. Before we go ahead and get started, we do have both another organizer who's on the line with me today, as well as some amazing panelists that I'm sure you guys will be excited to hear about. So let's go ahead and do those quick introductions before we kick it off. So again, my name is Anita Roberson. I'm the program manager for the Middle States. Joining me today is Siobhan Floyd, who's the assistant program manager for the Southeast region. Siobhan, would you like to say hello?
Yes, hi, welcome everyone. I'm glad to have you on tonight. I am, again, like Anita said, I'm Siobhan Floyd. I am the assistant program manager here for the Southeast region, and we have 3 scholars with us today, and I'm allowed them to introduce themselves. They'll tell us their names, what school they attend, and their grade level.
All right, cool. Hey guys, I'm Scott. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a 9th grader at Phillips Exeter, and through middle school, I went to the Westminster schools. And I've been a part of Better Chance for 4 years now.
Hi.
Awesome, Sarah.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Sarah Barra. I am a junior at the Madeira School. I've been a part of a Better Chance since about my 8th grade year. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Casey. I am a freshman at the Thatcher School, and this is my first year as part of A Better Chance.
Awesome. And really quickly, just so that folks get a sense, because some of your schools people may not be familiar with. So Scott, where is Exeter located?
Exeter is a boarding school in New Hampshire.
Awesome. And Sarah, where is Madeira located?
Madeira's day and boarding school in McLean, Virginia, but it's like 15 minutes away from Washington, D.C.
Awesome. And Casey, where is Thatcher located?
Thatcher is located in Ojai, California. It's about 30 minutes away from Santa Barbara.
Wonderful. And are all 3 of you from?
Sorry. And Scott also went to middle school at a day school in Atlanta. What was that school again, Scott?
It was the Westminster schools.
Awesome. And all 3 of you are from the Atlanta area, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Awesome. Great. All right. Thank you all so much for those amazing introductions. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to first start, though, with a couple of housekeeping. So for some of you, this may be the first time that you've been able to participate in a webinar. For some of you, I know that you might be pros. And so I just want to spend a couple of minutes just explaining how to ask questions, because questions is such an important part of this information session. The key way in which we want you to ask questions and engage with us is through the question feature. So all of you should be able to see on your screen an opportunity where you can actually click on a panel and type in a question that will come to us. So if you want to take a second and test that out by sending us a quick hello or how you doing or whatever is on your mind, that would be great. If you already have a question in mind that you have, you can go ahead and send it now as well. And we're going to be monitoring those questions all throughout the presentation. One thing, though, that we do want you to keep in mind is that there is another way to ask questions, which is to raise your hand, and we are not going to be using that feature this evening. So just keep that in mind. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask of either us as staff or from our wonderful panelists who are all scholars in our program, then you should use the question feature to do that. So feel free to go ahead and test that out, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Please be sure to download the handouts. I'm glad I saw that on the screen. So you guys have actually 2 handouts that we have included with the presentation. At any point, you can download those handouts. However, keep in mind that once the presentation ends, you will not be able to access those handouts. So if you haven't already taken advantage of downloading those handouts, then take a moment to do so at some point before we end the presentation at 9. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and get started. Okay, So let's talk a little bit about what a better chance is. I know that some of you may already be familiar, and for some of you who are listening to me tonight, a better chance might be an organization that you just literally found out about. But believe it or not, a better chance has been around since 1963. We are the oldest and only organization of its type from the standpoint that we are a national organization. So we have program managers stationed all throughout the United States. So for example, I'm the Middle States program manager and I'm in Philadelphia. You've already heard that Siobhan is in Atlanta, and we have program teams both in New York City as well as on the West Coast. And we were actually founded as part of the civil rights movement. So when you think about what was going on in 1963, especially as it pertains to education, I know a lot of times I think of our attempts to integrate the public school system, and I think about Ruby Bridges. And so we were doing something similar, but just doing that from the independent school perspective. So instead of focusing on how to ensure that students of color got into public schools, we were fighting for equity and access within the independent school space. We've been doing that ever since. What many people don't understand, though, is that a lot of times when they think about a better chance, especially if they know us, they think that we're an organization that is really just here to help get kids into different independent schools, when really our mission is much broader than that. And you can see that on the screen. Our mission is to increase substantially the number of well-educated young people of color who are capable of assuming positions of responsibility and leadership in American society. So at the core of who we are, we're really a leadership organization. And we use education as a platform to help to develop the leaders of color so that they too can access amazing positions within society, be it within education or politics or science or any industry that you can possibly imagine. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is actually the first class of a Better Chance Scholars back in 1963. They're actually standing outside of a building on Dartmouth College's campus. If you notice, it's all boys at that particular time, because I think a lot of times when we thought about building leaders, a lot of times back then we thought about boys primarily. Now, of course, our vision has expanded. We have we're co-ed programs, so we have both boys and girls. However, we are still very much grounded in assisting students of color and helping them to be successful. I'm also going to pause for a second. If all of my panelists and co-organizers can put their microphones on mute, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so since we've been around since 1963, we have a pretty long legacy of leadership. And this slide shows that, as you can see, we have alumni of the program who have been successful in every single field imaginable, from arts to business to education to government to medicine. There's a couple of people on this screen that you actually recognize. So for one, Tracy Chapman was a pretty famous folk singer from the 1980s. And even most recently, Governor Deval Patrick, who was a recent presidential candidate, is also a Better Chance alumni as well. Another, he actually went to school in Milton. He's from Chicago and found out about a Better Chance U.S. school counselor as well. And then Bertha Coombs, who's another pretty famous reporter for CNBC. So at this particular point, we have over 16,000 alumni who have graduated from our program. Another famous alumni who's very relevant right now is Issa Rae, who you guys all are familiar with as well. So we have a pretty long legacy of leadership and a lot of people who have leveraged our program to go on and do amazing things. All right, so what does a Better Chance do? Okay, so one is we recruit. We recruit academically talented students of color from all across the country. Students who are incredibly smart and are looking for educational opportunities that are going to expand their ability to not only expand their intellectual horizons, but also to grow and learn socially. Okay. We also provide you with access to a school network. So we work with over 300 of what we call member schools. And these are schools that have been vetted by our program, schools that are specifically looking to increase their diversity outreach and have special programs centered around that inside of their schools, and provide excellent educational options that are the best in the world. In addition to that, we also streamline the application process. And by that, I mean that if any of you have ever applied to an independent school before, you will notice that it's a very daunting process. In addition to having to complete an application, you also have to submit several different recommendations. You have to submit several years of transcripts. You also have to submit test scores and take different standardized tests. And so it's a lot to manage, in addition to having to go and interview, visit the school, and then manage the whole process once you actually, if you're lucky enough to actually receive an acceptance to the school and financial aid. And so one of the great benefits that we have through our program is that we're able to streamline that application process for you. And what that does is that it allows you to apply to multiple schools instead of just one. So instead of having to fill out several different applications, you're just filling out one application that we manage all the pieces for on your behalf. And then another great thing about our application process is that it's free. Many of our member schools actually charge application fees that can be, quite expensive. They can be anywhere from $50 to $125. And if you're trying to apply to multiple schools, which you really need to do to be successful in the process, those fees can make it really hard to be able to leverage that. So we both save you time in terms of you only having to fill out one application, and we save you money in the sense that you don't have to pay any of the application fees associated with it. So that's one of our biggest benefits. In addition to that, we also help to match you with schools. And this is really important. A lot of times, families who enter into our program might know a couple of independent schools, but you certainly don't know or have the history or understanding of every single independent school. And many of you may not even be familiar with many of the boarding schools that our scholars attend. So we play a vital role in helping you to understand how to begin researching schools, how to match that up, and then also introducing you to schools that are going to be great fits for your child that may not even be on your horizon, schools that you've never heard about or thought about before. So that's a pretty powerful benefit as well. We also advocate for our students and help them to gain admission into the school. And then we also provide ongoing support, typically in the form of leadership opportunities from study abroad to professional and career development and college access opportunities for our students once again. The one common misperception about A Better Chance is that we're a scholarship organization. And I think sometimes people assume that because we've had so many students be successful in gaining access to our school and also gaining the financial resources that they need. The reality, though, is that we are not a scholarship organization. All of the funding that our students receive in order to attend the schools that are in our network actually come from the schools themselves. And so part of what we do is help our families to understand how to access those resources. And the scholarships at the independent school level are not loans. So these are not things that you have to pay back. They are gifts from the school. They're investments in monies for your children to actually attend. Okay. And again, just my panelists and my organizer, there's some back that you're on mute. That would be great. Okay. So let's take a look at us by the numbers. We have over 50 years of service. Every year we face about 500 new scholars. So of the students that come through our program, 500 end up in one of our member schools. We currently have over 2,000 enrolled scholars and $100,000 in educational opportunities our kids access. And then we have over 15,000 alumni actually. So we have 16,000, I think was the last count that we had. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pause there to see if there are any questions. Siobhan, are there any questions about what I've covered so far before we move on?
I don't have any questions. Oh, I do. One just popped up. Most of the questions, okay. Some people say that they're hearing feedback as you're speaking. So if there's any way to correct the feedback on the speaker.
Yeah, someone had their microphone on, and so if all our panelists and organizers can just mute their mics for me, that would be great. That's where the feedback was coming from. So if everyone can be on mute, amazing. Yeah.
How much does the average Better Chance family pay for tuition minus scholarship awards?
Okay, so ask the question again, I'm sorry.
Sure, so it says, how much does the average A Better Chance family pay for tuition minus scholarship awards?
So that's a great question. A lot of times people assume that there is one flat or specific figure that that families pay, but in reality, the independent school process doesn't work like that. What you may or may not pay for tuition is really a reflection of a lot of different factors. One being, how strong is your child's application? If your child has an incredibly strong academic profile, and then it's applying to schools that have the resources to be able to provide full scholarships, the answer to that may be you may not have to pay anything. However, if you are have a child that's applying to maybe some local day schools that may not have the same breadth and depth of resources, you may be expected to pay something. So there's a lot of different factors that will determine what you're able to pay. One of the biggest factors, I must say, though, is how much money you make. So if you have a household income, let's say of $240,000, and your household consists of just you and your child, when you fill out your financial aid application, you may have an estimated family contribution, especially if you don't have much debt, that is significantly higher than, say, a family that may make $50,000 a year and has a household of 5. So a lot of times what you might have to contribute or pay is really dependent on, what income you earn, and what the financial aid application determines is your estimated family contribution. So I say that to say that everyone's going to be different. Every circumstance is different. Every child is different. Every applicant is different. It's going to vary by region. It's going to vary by what school, what types of schools you're applying for, if it's middle school or high school, what grade level you enter, and also by your household income. So there isn't a magic bullet in terms of that. We have some students who don't pay anything, and we have many, many more who pay some contribution that is matched with, the family's income. All right. Are there any other questions?
Yep. So there is one, somebody said 500 scholars total. I'm not sure what they meant, but then they came back and said, how many per grade? So I don't know if that's the admittance. So there's another question. Is there an admittance rate percentage? Like how many people that are admitted into a better chance, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then how many?
Right. So although we have data that tells us how many per grade, our program doesn't work that way. So we're not trying to target a certain percentage of kids per grade. What we're trying to do is identify the smartest, best, and brightest academically talented students of color every year and place them appropriately in schools and programs that are going to allow them to thrive. So we don't look at our statistics in that way. So we're not trying to say place a certain number of 7th graders or 8th graders. So I don't have that information. However, all of you, one of the handouts that you actually do have is a handout called our class profile. So every year we produce this sheet that creates or gives you a lot of the statistics that you guys are asking about for the prior year. So if you download that handout, you'll see the current breakdown for the last year of all our scholars by gender, by boarding school, by day school, by our community schools program, which I'm going to talk about in a second. You'll see the scholarship money total that our scholars achieved. You'll see what schools they've gotten into, using what colleges they've gotten into. I think if you're looking for some meaty statistics about effectiveness of the program, that's a really good sheet to download and to take a look at. All right. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on, because I want to make sure that we have enough time to also get our panelists in and to get some additional questions answered. So here are our school options. So as I mentioned before, we have over 300 member schools. And our member schools consist of day schools, boarding schools, and a special type of school called our community schools program. So these schools are, as you can imagine, schools that are independent, meaning that these are schools that charge tuition and they have independence to create an academic program, a social program of their choosing. They're not controlled by the state or the government or any kind of public entity. And the students attend school there during the day and they come home at night. Then we also have boarding school, which our panelists all go to different boarding schools throughout the country. One goes to a boarding school in the Mid-Atlantic, one in the Northeast, and one on the West Coast, so they all are from Atlanta, right? So boarding schools are schools that the students actually live on the campus of that particular school community. Typically, boarding schools are considered to be among the best schools in the country, mainly because of their reputation in terms of their academic excellence. And also just the simple fact that if you're living at school, it means that it gives you more opportunity for extended learning beyond just the normal school day. So kids in boarding schools, and I'm sure that our panelists will talk about that a little bit more, often end up being, some of the brightest, most enriched students that we have, simply because they have just constant continuous access to both their academic environment, including resources on our campus, as well as access to their teachers beyond the normal school day. And then we also have a very unique program called our Community Schools program. And this program is very unique. These are actually tuition-free options that our families have an opportunity to participate in. And what happens with them is that the students actually attend school at a public high school that's in a very affluent neighborhood. And then what happens is that they actually board in a community school's house with a residential advisor who lives there in the house with them. And the students all live together. They're only a Better Chance students, and they get a boarding kind of hybrid environment where they get additional support and structure with like tutoring and just a ton of support inside the Better Chance home while attending school at a public high school that is incredibly rated, because typically these schools are in very, very affluent neighborhoods. And so even though they're public schools, they actually look a lot like private and act a lot like private. And so our students also have the ability to attend school in those environments as well. Okay, so of course, one of the questions people often have is about, well, how do we actually finance independent schools? And when you go through the Better Chance program, we will spend time giving you several different workshops around financial aid. But because it's a question that I know that people have, we want to take just a second to explain how that works for you guys right now. So the way it works is that most of the schools have what's called an endowment. An endowment is a range of funds that typically come through donations, mainly from alumni who are prominent, and they're able to every year take a certain percentage of those monies and apply them towards financial aid. Most independent schools, most of the students who attend actually do receive financial aid. So one of the things that's important to understand is that financial aid is a very, very common thing. And so the way that it works is that you actually complete a financial aid application, and we would explain to you what financial application you would use for which school. And then once you actually complete that financial aid application, the school will then receive an estimated financial contribution based upon your household income, and then they will take a look at that, and then according to whatever their financial aid policy is and the amount of available funds they have and how competitive your child's application is, they will then determine what your financial aid award should be. So if you look at the example that's listed there, it's a pretty easy mathematical example. There's a school that you're applying to and has been admitted to, has school tuition, room and board of $40,000. It's stated according to your financial aid application that you can contribute $3,000 a year. And so the school decides to, awards you a financial aid package of $45,000 in scholarships and grants. Okay, so once again, these are not monies that have to be paid back. And typically, that $3,000, whatever the amount is for your family contribution, is typically broken up into installment payments if you can't pay it directly. So that's typically the easiest, shortest way of explaining how financial aid works. In most cases, financial aid is needs-based, and the students are actually admitted into the school needs blind. So most schools have a needs blind policy, which means that they make their admissions decisions separate from their financial aid decisions. However, there are a lot of schools, though, that also have merit-based awards, meaning that if your child is an academic superstar or has some other special affinity. Maybe they're a star athlete. Maybe they're from a specific city or state. Maybe they have specific interest in a certain subject. There are some schools that also have merit-based awards that are centered on that your children can also be eligible for. So once again, part of what we do within our program is we show you how to do that. Okay. All right, so let's talk about our different phases of our application process. So there's basically 3 phases from applicant to placement. So phase 1 is the applicant phase, which you all are in, which means that you're applying to the A Better Chance program. The second phase is the candidate phase. So once you're actually admitted or accepted into our program, it means that you then are going to begin to participate in different activities and sessions that we have to help you to get into one of our member schools. And then at the end of the day, our goal is to have you become a scholar within our program. So if you take a look at our Better Chance timeline, you'll see a better breakdown of what happens. So as you guys know, we have an 18-month placement cycle. And so what that means is that if you have a child who's currently in 4th grade, you're applying in 4th grade, you're not going to then be placed until 6th grade because you have to cycle through 18 months of programming before you're actually placed. That's why it's super important to understand that if you are considering our program or leveraging our program for high school placement, the best grade to apply is 7th grade for 9th grade placement. Now, if for some reason you're just finding out about us and you are a family that has an 8th grader, that's perfectly fine. It just means, though, that we would be helping you to get your child placed in 10th grade, or you can do what is very common, even though it might, sound strange to you now, but sometimes we do have students who repeat 9th grade simply because the academic rigor of our schools is so much different than the schools that most of our families' children currently attend. Okay, and so you can see through the timeline that there's a bunch of different things that happen. So, right now our application is open. It's due on April 15th. Everyone is expected to sit for a SSAT benchmark exam in May. We make our decisions on June 15th in terms of who is actually admitted into the program. And then if you are admitted, you then move into the second phase of the program, which is phase 2, our cohort phase. I think there was a question earlier about like approximately how many students are actually admitted into the program or what the percentage is. And we tend to admit only 50% of the students who apply. So it is pretty competitive in order to get into the program. Once you're actually in the cohort phase, you participate through a variety of different workshops that are designed to strengthen your child's candidacy to be admitted into independent school. And so we go over all different types of things, from a summer programming series that's designed to help strengthen your children's ability to interview effectively, to write the types of essays that are necessary to strengthen their application, and to understand the importance of studying for the SSAT. We also provide resources that you can leverage for studying for the SSAT as well. Then in addition to that, we have workshops for parents as well, workshops that help parents to understand how to properly research school, understanding the admissions process as well. And then as I mentioned, we also have financial aid workshops. We also host member school fairs that give our children exposure to many of our independent schools and opportunities to interview with them as well on the spot. And then we also help the students to understand how to set up their shadow visits and how to properly represent yourself once you're actually in that space vying for a particular spot. We also, during the cohort phase on the staff side, do a tremendous amount of advocacy and guidance, both in terms of helping you to understand how to best interpret the strengths of your child moving forward, and also in terms of talking and working with our member schools to advocate behind the scenes to help our students to be admitted. And then once we actually go through the process of helping you to gain access to one of the schools, then we're helping you to do all types of things in terms of helping you to make decisions between the different schools to which you may have been offered, helping you to understand how to negotiate financial aid, and if unfortunately if you're a candidate who doesn't get an immediate offer, then what are the next steps if you're waitlisted, and how to then move your child from the waitlist into a different position. So those are the things that we do within the cohort phase. And then lastly, our third phase is that assuming that your child gets an opportunity with a school and everything lines up in terms of fit and finances, then your child then becomes a scholar. And once they're a scholar, they then continue to remain with the Better Chance program and continues to be supported until your child actually graduates from the school. So typically this is a place where there are a lot of questions. So Siobhan, do you happen to have a question or two for me before I move on? Siobhan, if you're talking, you're on mute. Just so you know.
Sorry, I forgot I was on mute.
That's okay.
So does your family, I have a question. Does the family income matter in terms of acceptance into the program? Will preference be given to lower income families?
Okay, so you broke up a little bit, but I think your question was, does income matter for admittance into the program? Is that correct?
Correct. And is preference given to people who have lower incomes?
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. So, so the last question is easier to answer. No, preference isn't given to families that have lower incomes. We're looking for candidates that are academically strong. And in a little bit, I will talk about our criteria for getting in, but we want students that are academically strong first and foremost. So these are students who have, mainly A's. I know in my region, I'm pretty much a stickler on really, really strong grades. Technically, our criteria is that students have to have a minimum of a B average, but most of us do prefer and will admit the strongest academic students. We're also looking for students who clearly demonstrate leadership, meaning that they're students who are active in their community. It doesn't mean that your child has to be the captain of their soccer team or be the head of student council, but we do want to see students that care about their community and care about doing something more than going home and playing video games. And so we're looking for evidence of that in the application because our students are leaders on our campuses. That's what we are known for. And so that's what we look for in the application. So we're looking for strength. That's what we're looking for. Now, with regards to income, we don't have a hard income cap, but typically, families that earn or have a household income above $250,000 typically do qualify themselves out of our process because we do want to leverage our funds. Our program is free, and we raise funds from donors in order for students to receive the benefits that we have. And that's typically the household income point where we feel as though we're not really leveraging our dollars in the best way. So typically, on average, the highest income that typically is admitted into the program are household incomes of $250,000. But beyond that, the incomes range. Because once again, our main focus is making sure that we find candidates that are just academically solid and have really strong evidence of leadership. That's what we're looking for. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, I mentioned that one of the exams that students have to take are, especially for the into the program, is the SSAT. And so our SSAT is a standardized test in the independent school world. In fact, there's typically two, the SSAT and the ISEE. And again, Siobhan, I'm not sure if that's you, but you may have to put yourself on mute to reduce the feedback, just so you know. So the SSAT and the ISEE are two tests that are important in the independent school world. In most cases, students have to take one of these two exams. And so part of our application process, because we model our application process after independent schools, we also require our families to take a benchmark SSAT exam. Now, the beautiful thing is that the benchmark SSAT is free. So we do not charge for that. And we primarily leverage it, to be perfectly honest, as a baseline. I know in the Middle States region, although we look at those scores as part of the application process, we primarily use it so that when a student is admitted, they have a baseline of understanding what it is specifically they need to focus on the SSAT over the summer to improve so that they can actually strengthen that score in the fall. Okay, so many of us leverage it in that way. And so for those reasons, we don't encourage you to try to go out and have your kids study crazily for the SSAT before they take that benchmark exam in May. We would much rather you focus your attention on submitting quality essay responses and quality short responses as part of your application. That's where the time should be spent. And then once you get your SSAT scores back, if you're admitted into the program, you then can take that information and leverage it to figure out how to then strengthen those scores when you take the actual exam in September. All right, so with that being said, I think I'm pretty much done going through many of our slides, and I want to now give you guys an opportunity to ask some additional questions or ask some questions specifically of our panelists. So Siobhan, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can take it from there.
Sure.
And you're probably on mute.
Okay. So if we have been admitted and enrolled into one of the partnering schools prior to fourth grade, are we eligible to apply to ABC entering into fourth grade?
Okay, so you're breaking up a little bit, so I may have to have you repeat the question again.
Sure. If we have been admitted and enrolled in one of the partnering schools prior to the fourth grade, are we eligible to apply to ABC entering into fourth grade?
Okay, got it. So I think the question is that if you are currently attending one of our member schools, can you still apply to the Better Chance program? Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay, got it. So I get this question a lot, and my question, I guess, or my answer kind of is a question back to you. Why are you applying to a Better Chance? Because typically you're applying to a Better Chance because your child currently attends a school that either is about to end, meaning that maybe the school only goes out to sixth grade and you're looking for a middle school option, or maybe the school is a K-8 school and you're looking for a high school option, right? So either the school's about to end if you're actually happy with the school, or you're looking for a better school alternative. So if you currently go to a school that you like, and you're happy with that particular school, and it's one of our member schools, then it doesn't make sense to leverage our program, because in order for you to be successful in the Better Chance program, it means that you're going to, after being in our program for 2 years, you're going to leave the school that you're in. So you have to think strategically about that. So if you're in a member school that's a K-8 school, and you're like, you know what, I would like to leverage a Better Chance for high school placement, then you would apply in 7th grade for 9th grade placement, because that's what you would need. So if your child is currently in 4th grade and you currently attend a K-8 or Better Chance school, it doesn't make sense for you to apply right now, because that would mean that your child would need to leave in 6th grade, unless you're unhappy with that school and you're interested in other options. So I hope that makes sense. So do we have any questions for our scholars who are on?
Once recommendations to schools are made, are you forced to go to one of those schools? And that could be for the scholars. So you receive referrals to schools, were you forced to go to any of those schools?
Got it. So why don't we turn that to our panelists? So I don't know who wants to take that, but were any of you forced to go to the schools that you now attend?
I can take that one.
Okay, announce yourself. Yep.
Oh, sorry. My name is Sarah Ibarra, again, junior from the Madeira School. And after A Better Chance gave me my list of referrals, which was about 10 schools, I was not forced to go to any single one of them. After they gave me my referrals, A Better Chance worked well with me to help me figure out what schools would be best to visit, what schools would be best to look further into, especially after like seeing like the decisions of the schools and all. So you're not forced to go to any kind of school. It's more of what you feel how you feel you can fit into that environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's perfect. Absolutely. Did any of you, I'm seeing a lot of questions here. I hope you don't mind if I jump in, Siobhan, but I'm seeing some questions about, and this happens a lot, parents who are questioning whether or not they need to prepare for the benchmark SSAT. Did any of you guys prepare, not for the SSAT you took in September, but did any of you feel you had to prepare for the benchmark SSAT in order to get into a better chance? And if so or if not, what did you focus on instead, if you can remember from way back then?
From way back then, I just remember um, going over like simple math concepts that I hadn't done in a while, or simple like grammar things. It wasn't anything serious that was like really aggressive studying, I would say. More of just preparing myself on, okay, I have to sit down here for like a couple of hours. So let me build my endurance and stuff like that.
Great, thank you. Siobhan, I'm going to give it back to you.
Yes, so there's also another question. Do students need to have a 4.0 to be accepted into a better chance? Any of the panelists want to take that?
No, I don't believe that you have to have a 4.0 GPA. It's more of having like a strong application, being well-rounded. Like I personally do sports and then I do musical theater and then academics were really important to me. And I think having like the very like roundness of that application really helped me.
Awesome. So I see a question here. I don't know if you see it, Siobhan, that's specifically for the panelists, and maybe Scott can take it. I'm not sure we heard him. So one of the questions is, what have you liked so far about your current school, and how have you adjusted to living away from home? So Scott, do you want to unmute yourself and try to take that question?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, going up to the Northeast, living in Georgia was definitely really tough for me, especially with always just different climate, just different people who talk different from you. And it's a big adjustment, but it's really great because you get to live every day with your friends. So like, there's no reason to like not have anything to do, and the buildings are always open. You can always use your teachers at any time, and there's always something to do, especially at boarding school.
Have any of you had any trouble adjusting to being away from home? And all of you go to school pretty far away. Like there's no one who's attending a boarding school in the state that they are from. So were there any challenges adjusting? And if so, how did you deal with it?
It was really tough adjusting in the beginning, but once you make those nice connections with the people who are also far away from home, then you can just have like this group that you can relate to. And of course, you have advisors and adults who are always there if you feel like it's too much or anything, but it really honestly becomes like home, like a second home within the first month or two. And there are always events that bring you closer to just the whole entire school, which makes it a lot easier when you feel like you have people you can relate to and people who have your back whenever you feel lonely or homesick.
Thanks, Casey. Siobhan, I'm kicking it back to you again.
Sorry, I have to keep remembering to come off of mute. I had a few questions.
That's okay.
Does the program guarantee admission into the member schools? So were you guys guaranteed admission into the schools that you were referred to?
Actually, hi again, my name is Sarah, and my process through getting schools was actually a lot more difficult than I expected. I entered as a new sophomore I applied as a new sophomore to a bunch of schools, and that was a little difficult because a lot of the schools were looking for smaller classes to add. So there was difficulty there. However, my experience with just being at my school and like being able to like narrow down what was best for me with throughout like all the application process. I still found like a home for me, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Question for
And just
Scott. Oh, sorry, go
and
ahead,
hold on one
Anita.
second, Siobhan. No, it's okay. I also just want to answer that as staff. So our program does not guarantee placement at any of our schools. So I just want to be clear about that. We have just a really good and strong evidence-based reputation of helping academically talented students of color to access these schools by getting admitted and also to access the financial resources that are needed to get in. So you definitely, in many cases, have a stronger, because of how the program is structured, because of the relationships that we have with our member schools, because of the fact that you have someone who's advocating for you and you have a group of people who know what happens behind the scenes in ways that you don't know and understand. It, being in our program increases the likelihood that you are going to get admitted. But the kids that make it and the families that make it is really a reflection of how strong their applications are and how hard they work and how hard they listen and follow the advice and guidance that we give. We have a phrase in A Better Chance called trust the process. And so the families who really buy in and trust the process tend to be the ones that, assuming that their applications are really strong, are the ones who see tremendous success at the end of the day. But often the families who don't trust the process and don't quite do the things that we ask, or maybe do some things but not other things, are the ones that don't do as well. So our program is effective when people tend to follow the advice and guidance that we lay out. But there are no guarantees.
So I have a
two other
question.
questions. What? Sorry. I have a question for Casey.
Yes.
Casey, you ready?
Yes.
So the question says, I just lost it. Oh, she said, not sure if you can see my question, but I was wondering if the young lady at Thatcher is able to take advantage of the equestrian program at Thatcher.
Yes. So the horse program at Thatcher, it's a lot of fun. It's very rigorous. So when you first get there, they make you do like a test, and as a freshman, you are required to ride a horse the whole year, as well as take care of it, which includes grooming and waking up early in the morning to take care of it. Um, so so after classes, you have to go up to the barns and saddle and ride, basically for 2 hours. And basically you do that almost every day. You have 2 rest days, depending on if you're doing a sport or not, considering sports is also required at Thatcher. So it may seem like a lot, but they always make sure you have time for it, because it really builds character, and it really teaches you responsibility. I myself have been injured, so I haven't been riding, but I do know that we're coming up on Big Gymkhana, which is like, it's a nice culmination to the horse program right now.
Question for Scott. How old were you when you moved from the south to the north?
I was 15, and I'm still 15.
Anita, did you have a question?
I had a question for the staff.
There's a question for the staff.
Oh, for the staff. I had a question. So I have a 5th grader who is in the application process for 6th grade for one of the member schools. And we learned about A Better Chance too late for him to apply through A Better Chance. And so my question is a little two-part. I have a 7th grader who I'm actually starting A Better Chance application process for him for 9th grade. Is it am I able to apply for my 5th grader as well? Yet to apply for siblings.
There are no restrictions in terms of who, there are no restrictions in terms of sibling. We look at every application separately. So you have to submit a separate application for each child. Each child is evaluated separately. I know that there have been situations where I've admitted one student, one sibling, and the other student wasn't strong enough in the same household or family, which is what happens in the independent school world. So we look at individuals independently. So if your child meets our eligibility criteria, regardless if they're siblings or not, you should submit an application for them if you think that this is a program that can benefit them, and they're going to be evaluated individually on their merit, on their individual merit, and that's the same for twins as well.
Okay, so then for the 5th grader, it does. Thank you. So for the 5th grader, okay, this would be the application for him starting his 7th grade year, right?
So it depends on what grade you want to place the child in. So that's what you have to think about as a family. You have to, or as a parent, you have to think about at what grade do I want to leverage the program? Now, for some people, it's really easy. It's like, well, we found out about it this year and we want to leverage it as soon as possible because I don't think my child's in a school in which they're being academically challenged, right? And so for that, it doesn't really matter what grade as long as they're in an eligible grade because your goal is to get them in a more competitive environment. But in the independent school world, there are natural entry points, and that will vary on the day school level depending on what region. So, for example, there are some regions where the middle school level 6th grade is the entry point, and in some cases it's 7th, right? And so your individual regional program manager can explain that to you. And then, of course, at the high school level, the natural entry point is 9th grade. So, so again, depending on what your goals are, that then determines at what point, or at what grade level your child should apply. You just have to keep in mind that it's an 18-month cycle. So the mistake we often find people making is that they wait to apply for high school when their child's in 8th grade. And they're hoping for a 9th grade placement. It's like it doesn't work that way. You have to apply in 7th for 9th. If you apply in 8th, unless your child's going to repeat a grade, we're going to place them in 10th and so on and so forth. So it's really, that's really a question for you as the parent.
Okay. Got it. No, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if you can mute your phone back, that would be great.
And can I add something, Anita?
Sure, of course.
Yes, so in the Southeast region, our biggest entry points are 6th grade, which middle school, and then we have 9th grade. And then we call the other grades kind of our off-year placements. So it's not that you can't get in 7th, 8th, 10th, or 11th. It's just harder especially in the day schools in Atlanta, because the seats are limited. So you have your 9th grade and 6th grade placement because, of course, that's their opening where you have more seats available in 9th grade because that's where people start high school or middle school in the Southeast. But in 7th grade, there might be schools that don't open up that many seats because the kids can come back the next year. So they might have like 1 or 2 seats. So there's not a lot of entry in like the 7th or 8th grade. Not saying that people can't be placed in 7th, 8th, 10th, 11th grade. It's just harder to place because we call those off years, at least in the Southeast region for us. So we do have kids that get placed. Sometimes it's a little tougher to do that. So we usually say that it's easier if you come in 4th grade for entry in 6th grade, if you come in 7th grade for entry in 9th grade.
So I don't know, I know you broke up a little bit for me, but if I could paraphrase for you, Siobhan, just in case people couldn't hear you, because you broke up a little bit for me. She was just explaining that there are different, in the independent school world, there are different points of placement where it's just a little bit more challenging, perhaps, to place your child within an independent school environment. So, for example, if you are an 8th grader applying for 10th grade placement, in some regions and in some areas and for some schools, that's an off-year placement. So you can certainly apply, but it is going to be a little bit more challenging because there are going to be fewer spaces, and in some cases, there might be less financial aid. Again, for me personally, I don't want you to think as a parent too much about that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want you to try to figure out, okay, should we apply an A? Should we apply? Like, I really just want you to think about, like, how do we want to leverage the program? Going back to that original point about if you currently attend a member school, it doesn't make sense for you to apply to us if you're happy where you are. But if you have a desire where you're noticing that, you know what, my child isn't academically challenged, they need to be in a more competitive environment. They're suffocating in their school because the school just doesn't have the resources to allow them to pursue the interests that they have. If you are a parent that hears me say that, you're like, oh my God, you're talking about my kid, regardless of what grade they're going to be placed in, you need to fill out the application. We will then, within our individual regions, determine whether or not we can help you. So I don't need you to figure that out. I don't need you to figure that out for me in the middle states about whether or not your child is going to be eligible or get placed. What I need you to do is just say, make a decision. Like, yes, I want this for my child. And if the answer is yes, then fill out that application and then let us do our job and do the rest. I know personally, and I think my fellow program managers are like this, if we don't feel as though we can help your child get placed, we're not going to admit you into our program. So there's no need to think too deeply about that. We really just need to figure out, is this something that we want to do, and can this benefit my child? And if the answer is yes, then go for it, apply, and fill out that application. So, all right. So thank you all for the questions. I will try to go through and answer some more, but right now I do want to shift your attention a little bit because one of the things that we like to do before we close out is give you an opportunity to see the application. Some of you may or may not know where or how to access it. So I want to just take a moment to show you all where to access the application, how to take advantage of that. And right now I'm just having a little bit of trouble with my screen. So once I get to where I need to get to, I'm going to show you how to do that. And thank you, Siobhan, and thank you, panelists, for the questions and the answers. You guys were all great. Okay, so just really quickly, here are some just quick tips and pointers in terms of the application. So naturally, you access our application by going to the A Better Chance website at abetterchance.org. Right now, you're seeing the screen for the application, and then to begin your application, you simply click here, and it brings you to our launch page for the actual application. If you have not established an application before, then you're going to have to simply, as a first-time user, follow the instructions that are listed here on the bottom and create an account. And it's super important that you understand that whatever email address you use is going to be the email address forever. So make sure that you pick an email address that you're actually going to be checking email for. Because we will use your email address not only for the application, it will also be the email address that's given to schools, and it'll also be the email address that you will use when your child becomes a scholar in the program. So make sure you pick a good email address whose email you're going to check, okay? And so once you've actually set up an account, and I'm going to go ahead and do our test account, you would just come here whenever you're ready to work on the application. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to fill out the application all in one setting, plus you couldn't even if you wanted to. The application is pretty comprehensive, but it is, it's not hard to do in the sense that even though it has a lot to it, it's really broken up into 3 components. There's parts that you have to do as a parent, there's parts that your children have to do, and then there's parts that the school has to do. And so when you think about it from that standpoint of, breaking it into thirds, it really becomes a lot more manageable. But we do recommend that you start soon because there are quite a few different pieces of it. And there's information that you're going to need from multiple people. So the sooner that you can start working on it, the better off it's going to be to meet that April 15th deadline. So this is actually what it looks like. This is what the application looks like once you actually get into it. Right here where you see add an applicant is where you're going to add your applicant, meaning it's your child's name. If you have multiple children, then you're going to have multiple names listed here because each child needs its own individual application because they're their own person applying for their own opportunity within our program to get placed within their own school. Okay. One of the best things about our website is the fact that you have this wonderful video here. I strongly recommend that everybody, before you get started, or if you've already started, actually play the How to Complete the A Better Chance application video. It literally will walk you through what to do and how to do it so that you know exactly what steps to take. There's also an online application guidelines and FAQ part as well. So I'm sorry, I just realized my screen was paused. So now you guys are probably seeing this. So you will see the how to complete the application. You will see the online application guidelines and FAQs. Again, if you didn't see my screen before, you will see the place where you can add an applicant as well. Okay, so everything that you need in terms of resources, I strongly recommend you download the online application guidelines and FAQs as well, just so that you understand how to navigate that. And as I mentioned before, watch the video. And then as you scroll down, you will see the actual application form. There's actually two parts of the application that needs to be submitted by April 15th. So this is really important. One is the actual application form. And once you click on that, it will take you, if you click on complete form, it will take you to the form. The form is where you actually fill out the application. So it'll have common things like demographic questions. It'll have short response questions for the parents, such as, why do you want this opportunity for your child? What's your child's strengths and weaknesses? Then you'll also see the section of the application as for your child, the applicant, where we're asking your child questions about, their interests and what they think their best, subject is, and whether or not, how would they rate themselves in school. And there's also an essay component of the application as well. So if you click on complete form, and I'm not going to do it right now for the sake of time, you will be able to preview all of those different sections. You can actually print out the form as well. Now, you cannot submit the form printed out. It has to be submitted online. But if you wanted to print it out and then just give your child their section so they can start working on that, you certainly could. But you do have to come back and submit the whole thing online. Once you're actually done the application portion, which is totally in your control, meaning it's in the control of the parent and the applicant, you can submit it. So what we don't want to do is we don't want everybody to just to wait until you have your recommendations or to wait until you have all your documents. Once you're done each part of the application, you should submit it. So once you actually have that part done, hit submit. Okay, same thing with the supporting documents. Now for supporting documents, we need a couple of different things. We need 2 years worth of transcripts, meaning we need their current grades as well as their grades the prior year. We need your household income information. We need a photo. And if your child has a green card or is a permanent resident, we need a copy of that ID. And all those things also need to be uploaded. And once you've gathered all that documentation, you can submit that even if you're still working on your application. So once again, don't think in terms of, oh, I have to wait until I have all these pieces in. As you get the different pieces done, hit submit, okay? But don't submit them until they're all finished because you are not going to be able to go back and change them. We also require recommendations, and as you notice, I'm scrolling down, you'll see that we require 2 online recommendations, one from a school counselor or principal, and one from a current math, English, science, history, or social studies teacher. We are strict about that. You cannot submit a recommendation from a teacher that your child had 2 years ago. It has to be a current teacher, and it has to be a current school counselor or principal, okay? And then the way that you submit your recommendation is that you come here, you click on the request, you type in your principal or counselor's email address, you're able to type them a note, and then you hit submit. Same thing here for the teacher. You edit the request, you type in their email address, and then you type them a note, and then you hit submit. And then whenever you come back, you can come back and actually monitor whether or not the item has been received. So once your principal or counselor or teacher has submitted those pieces, you will see a green check mark to let you know that it's done. Okay, so it's super important that everybody understands those pieces. All right. Wonderful. And then the last thing I just want to say before we close is that each of you have a regional manager or a regional team that you can reach out to for additional questions. And so if you go to our About page on our website, which is right here, and go to Contact Us, okay, and if you scroll down, you will see that once you get past the national office, you will see the regional offices. So depending on where you live, here's the contact information for your regional team. So if you have any questions at all as you go through the process, you can either email our admissions team right here at admissions@abetterchance.org, or if you have some very specific questions about things that pertain to your region, be it member schools or what have you, then you can reach out to your specific teams in the Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, Southwest, or in the Middle States. And the Middle States consists of the Mid-Atlantic and the Midwest. Okay. All right, so I've kept you over just a little bit. Siobhan, is there anything that I've missed or anything you'd like to say before we conclude?
I think you covered it all. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you enjoy your evening.
Thank you. And I also want to thank you, Siobhan, for being my co-partner, and also for our wonderful scholar panelists. Thank you so much. I know it's a long night. It's 9 o'clock. You probably have homework and things to do. So thank you all so much for joining us. And families, thank you for joining us this evening. And we look forward to seeing your applications. And please reach out if you have any additional questions. All right. Good night, everybody. Bye, Siobhan. Bye, scholars.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.